Curtis thinks surviving one night against an ancient witch will be a piece of cake, but he accidentally sets her free. Now he'll have to face his own fears, regain his team's trust, and stop David from turning Camp David into a massacre. The episode begins with President Curtis taking a call in the Oval Office. The people on the other end make it clear that the party doesn't care if he spends his time kicking Mothmen around. What they really want to know is where the bills are and what happened to the Supreme Court reform he promised. Curtis defends himself, arguing that part of his job is eliminating fear as well.
Tony set a meeting with the party. I'm starting to think we shouldn't support Curtis for re-election.
Totally. He's a fluke one-termer.
Did you hear that?
Before ending the call, Curtis fails to hang up properly and accidentally overhears a conversation that clearly wasn't meant for him, revealing that they have no intention of supporting his re-election. Banks walks into the office right afterward and, once he realizes what happened, confronts Curtis for not telling him about the call with the party.
And my job to help with party drama.
You think I give a shit about the party? When you need to know something, you'll know. Like now, you should know I gotta piss.
Not long after that, while Curtis is in the bathroom, he starts hearing the voice of a mysterious woman calling out to him. The voice tries to intimidate him, telling him that he's afraid and weak, but Curtis simply walks out and orders the entire staff to get ready because they're leaving for Camp David immediately.
You're taking a vacation now?
We leave in 20.
Don't ever stand around waiting for him, okay? That's my thing.
How long were you behind me?
If you're asking if I heard you fart, the answer is yes.
During the trip, Curtis goes through an old book that has been passed down from president to president, looking for advice on what he's about to face. The book explains that whenever a president is summoned to Camp David, they must undergo a test of mental will against an ancient witch named David.
Oh my God, guys, it's nothing. She can't even touch me. I just have to make it to sunrise without surrendering my kingdom. She's ancient.
Once they arrive, the bizarre ritual begins, which for some reason also requires Curtis to walk completely naked into the woods. As he heads off, Banks starts worrying because he feels like the president has been telling him less and less lately, although O'Doyle reminds him that Curtis isn't required to keep him informed about absolutely everything. With the president occupied, the rest of the staff takes the opportunity to enjoy Camp David.
Felt such an urge to give someone a swirly.
Good luck. All the toilets here are eco-friendly since Obama.
The lifers see people like Banks as temporary employees who disappear the moment a presidency ends. They, on the other hand, stay at the White House no matter who happens to be in charge. They even start teasing Banks, saying there's a pretty good chance this could be both his first and last trip to Camp David. Meanwhile, Curtis reaches a swamp where David finally appears. The witch takes the form of a naked woman who is clearly trying to seduce him, but her appearance is so bizarre that Curtis ends up making fun of her instead. David offers to end the trial immediately if Curtis agrees to hand over his kingdom, which would also break the ancient pact keeping her trapped. Curtis refuses, insisting that he'll simply put up with her attempts to get inside his head until the sun comes up.
I'm sorry, but you just look ridiculous.
At that moment, she takes the form of Curtis's late mother and tries to hurt him by claiming that he was always a disappointment to her.
My real mom was scarier than that. Keep talking. You're making me all sentimental.
Meanwhile, Banks is still worried about Curtis, knowing that he's completely alone out there facing the witch. O'Doyle tells him that if he's so concerned, he should go look for him, but Banks says that's exactly why he's wearing a suit even while rowing a canoe. He wants to be ready in case the president needs him. However, after spending some time with the lifers, Banks starts wondering whether it really makes sense to put so much trust in a single person. O'Doyle immediately rejects the idea and reminds him that they serve Curtis specifically, not simply whoever happens to occupy the White House. Their argument eventually reveals that part of Banks's real problem is that he feels Curtis no longer trusts him or tells him what's going on. Not long afterward, Banks runs into the lifers again while they're practicing axe throwing. Although they initially continue treating him like a temporary employee, Banks starts playing along and proves that he can fit in with them.
That's an ass cheek turkey. Put me down for 30.
Damn, you really aren't like the other chiefs of staff, are you? Jan, exactly how many did Curtis have before her?
This helps Banks better understand why the lifers never get too attached to anyone. They've watched presidents and staff members come and go over the years, so they simply keep doing their jobs no matter who happens to be in charge. The lifers then decide to show him their greatest treasure, a journal called Commander in Brief, where they've spent years documenting the secrets and most embarrassing moments of different presidents. The stories include all kinds of insane things involving former commanders-in-chief, including completely ridiculous rumors that the lifers swear actually happened.
One of them was a time traveler, but I'm not gonna tell you who or when.
Meanwhile, David continues trying to break Curtis mentally. This time, she creates a vision where his own party is conspiring to push him out of power. Susan and the others talk about finding someone else for the next election, convinced that people will eventually grow tired of Curtis's style and choose someone more stable instead. The witch then tries something much more personal, taking the form of the son Curtis once imagined having with Beverly. The boy tells him that he was never born because deep down, Curtis knows he would have failed as a father too. Even so, Curtis refuses to break. Since David still can't physically touch him, the president mocks the illusion and keeps provoking her. The witch insists that beneath all that arrogance, Curtis is terrified, but he simply suggests that maybe she should be the one to quit the challenge. David tries to scare him one more time, and for a moment, Curtis actually looks worried. But then he immediately reveals that he was only pretending, and celebrates the fact that he managed to turn the situation around yet again. Convinced that he has the trial completely under control, he tells David to keep going because they still have the entire night ahead of them. Meanwhile, Banks keeps reading the lifer's journal and discovers that Curtis's secrets are pretty ridiculous. Apparently, he cries while watching RoboCop every morning and also pees sitting down. As part of his initiation, they offer Banks a spot among the lifers for the day Curtis inevitably fires him. But first, he has to complete a strange ritual that involves hanging the president's Batman underwear from a flagpole. Banks happily agrees, but O'Doyle arrives and is completely outraged when he sees what's happening. To him, Banks is betraying Curtis, especially because he knows those are the exact underwear the president wears when he sits down to watch cartoons, a detail the lifers immediately add to their journal as well. Meanwhile, David keeps searching for an experience that might finally break Curtis. First, she mentally transports him back to Afghanistan, where he relives one of the mistakes he made during his time in the military. But Curtis recognizes the trick before he completely falls for it. David then changes the setting again and takes him to Buritorama, the restaurant where Curtis worked when he was younger. There, his former manager, Chet Simmons, appears and starts humiliating him for being incapable of even washing a plate properly.
And for the record, I wasn't a bad dishwasher. Marco was 48 years old, buying beer for underage kids after work. He had his own problems. The fact that he was a better dishwasher than me is an admission of his own weakness, not mine.
And that was exactly what David had been waiting for. Curtis has just said that he quits. And even though he was only talking about his old job, the witch interprets his words as surrendering the challenge itself. Just like that, the pact is broken, and David finally regains her freedom.
I'm free! Free to finally eat something other than fucking swamp water!
Her first victims are Kyle and Lisa, two guards who are supposed to be watching the entrance, but are far too busy making out to notice what's coming. David kills them, although Curtis manages to catch up with her and seemingly takes her down shortly afterward. Convinced that it's finally over, Curtis returns to his team and explains that David used her powers to get inside his head and manipulate him into saying that he quit. Banks immediately gets upset when he learns the witch could do all of that, because Curtis never bothered to tell him. At that moment, the president also notices his Batman underwear flying from the flagpole and demands to know what the hell is going on. But before they can sort any of that out, David reappears, completely regenerated. O'Doyle finally realizes what the problem is. David is a water witch, which means she can rebuild her body. On top of that, the bullets he brought to deal with other types of creatures are completely useless against her. David lunges at Curtis again and looks ready to devour him, but this time the lifers step in. Janice, Cherry, and even Michael from accounting grab the axes they had been throwing earlier and stand in front of the president to protect him. Banks is shocked to see that the same employees who spent the entire night insisting presidents are completely replaceable are now risking their own lives to keep Curtis from getting killed. However, before they can move on, they discover Trent's body, the man O'Doyle has been talking about all night. Curtis also takes the opportunity to grab his underwear, since he's been completely naked for far too long. With everyone gathered together, O'Doyle explains that running away won't solve anything. Water witches feed on fear and shame, so if they want to bind David again, they're going to need an enormous amount of vulnerability and plenty of copper. That's when the lifers hand over their journal. Curtis starts reading all the embarrassing things they wrote about him, but none of it seems to bother him much until he discovers that Banks told them his own party doesn't want to support his re-election, and that he was also the one responsible for hanging his Batman underwear from the flagpole. Banks finally admits that he acted that way because he felt Curtis was pushing him away and was afraid he might get fired. Curtis then admits the truth as well. That call with the party genuinely scared him. He's afraid of losing the presidency, but he didn't want to admit it because he thought Banks might lose faith in him.
To the swamp, now!
With the plan in place, everyone heads back to the swamp carrying copper objects. O'Doyle prepares the mechanism needed to reconnect David to the area, while Curtis orders everyone to stay vulnerable no matter what happens. When David appears, Curtis realizes something important. The witch insists that as long as they know she exists, they'll always be afraid of her, indirectly revealing that her own greatest fear is being forgotten. Curtis takes advantage of that weakness and gives the signal to begin the ritual. Everyone starts reciting the incantation while confessing their insecurities and most embarrassing secrets. Curtis admits that he hides his insecurity behind arrogance, and finally acknowledges that Marco really was a better dishwasher than him. Banks confesses that he was jealous of Trent, while the lifers begin revealing secrets of their own, some of which are far more disgusting than necessary. All that vulnerability eventually weakens David. Curtis then uses the strength of his administration to complete the ritual and bind her to the swamp once again. Once everything is over, Banks approaches the lifers to thank them and decides that he probably shouldn't consider himself one of them just yet.
Michael, we need to talk about your diarrhea.
Not long afterward, Curtis calls Susan again. This time, he openly admits that he knows the party probably won't support his re-election, and that, even though he previously pretended not to care, it actually does bother him. Banks also jumps in to make it clear that they work for the people, not the party, so Susan can expect them to keep fighting monsters. Curtis even lets Banks take part directly in the conversation with the party, showing that he finally trusts him again. After hanging up, Curtis and Banks start making fun of Susan, believing the call is already over. However, they soon realize she's still listening because she also dropped the phone while trying to hang up. Curtis admits that he probably just made his relationship with the party even worse. Later, O'Doyle attends Trent's funeral and decides to speak in front of his family. He admits that he barely knew the man, but also acknowledges that he spent far too much time competing with him simply because he considered the two of them the best-looking guys in the office. However, just when it seems like he has finally gotten over his jealousy, Trent's family mentions that their son used to describe O'Doyle as the most annoying person in the entire office. The moment he hears that, O'Doyle immediately gets angry at Trent all over again, proving that their rivalry was nowhere near completely over.